Hi, everyone, and welcome to, what podcast are we? Oh, yeah, Two Pages Podcast. I'm your host, Skeletroid Blockbuster, and we have a smaller cavalcade of people here today. Um, with us is ever loyal Tom, who's been here every episode. How's it going, Tom?
Not bad.
And we're doing something a little special today. Um, After this podcast is over, head on over to Tom's channel. I have it in the description, Aussie Imitator. And we're going to be talking some NXT wrestling stuff. It's going to be awesome. But that's not what we're going to talk about right now, so we'll save that talk for later. What have you been up to in the last month, Tom?
Um, Oddly not much, but well, aside from the fact that we've been doing, um, well, this is like my second, I think. This will be my second and third podcast in the last couple of days. Um, I did start doing a Game of Thrones podcast with Graham and Maeve LaFay about, I think it was a week ago. Pretty much just because I wanted to talk about it, but I didn't want to talk about it on my own, so I figured, well, they seem to be interested, so that kind of worked out. We didn't have May for the first one, though, but we were able to get her into the second one. Pretty much aside from that, I've just been watching South Park and playing video games.
Nothing wrong with that.
Mm.
Better than my month has been. Fuck. March was kind of like a shittier February. Like, we got the same amount of snow, only there's 3 more days in March than there are in February. So,
Yeah.
that by default makes it shittier. Too much shoveling. Far too much shoveling. Yeah, that's really all I've been up to. That and playing Game Boy games on my 3DS. But that's also for a different podcast. See, that's why I have so many different podcasts, just because I like talking about so many different things. And if we were just to amalgamate them all, I think it would be just a clusterfuck every single week.
Yes.
So it's good to have topics.
Yeah.
So without further ado, because we're going to head over to Tom's channel after this, so let's cut this preamble shit and get right to the first story. And since we know who's doing the last one, I guess we know who's doing the first one.
Okay. Just for people that don't know, I'm pretty much just reading the last of the epic adventure things that I did with those characters, Gary and Keith.
The last or the first?
Reading the last of the ones I've done, but it's technically the first one because I've gone in like reverse order. Because the funny thing is if this podcast had started this year instead of last year, I probably would have read them in order. But we started in October.
Yeah, well, sometimes good ideas don't come around soon enough.
So I read the last one first, the second one second, because the first one was a Christmas themed. Second one was Valentine's Day themed, and the last one doesn't really have a specific holiday theme, so I just figured that I'd read it out for this, and I actually added stuff just so it would actually reach the 2-page minimum, because I didn't really
maximum.
You
go over
maximum.
You get the fish shaking out of you.
But yeah, it was only like just a page, so I just added some stuff. So just because I'm probably going to upload this one to DeviantArt as well, I've called it Gary's Epic Sandwich Adventure Redux.
Nice.
Which, by the way, I never realized that that's how that was pronounced. I always thought it was redo because I thought it was like French or something, but it's actually like taken from some Latin thing. Anyway, um, okay. One fine and sunny day in suburbia, a young man named Gary was happily making himself a ham and cheese sandwich in the kitchen of his house, which he shared with his partner Keith. The sandwich was a surprise for Keith for when he came home. Suddenly, just as Gary had finished making and wrapping up the sandwich, two ninjas broke in through the glass door at the back of the house, immediately making their way into the kitchen to find a confused Gary staring back at them. The ninjas made it clear that they'd come for the sandwich, but Gary wasn't about to let them, especially after they wrecked a perfectly good door he paid good money for. This was unforgivable. One of the ninjas lunged at Gary, who quickly reacted by grabbing a pair of knives and blocking the ninja's dagger with them, pushing him back and slashing away, eventually cutting the ninja twice, forcing the ninja to use a smoke bomb. When the smoke finally cleared, Gary, still coughing, opened his eyes to find the sandwich and the ninjas had disappeared. Gary would not give the sandwich up this easily. He couldn't. It was the principle of the thing. He suited up with a katana, as well as some more things he'd found in the kitchen, and headed outside to see the ninjas still hadn't left the street. It appeared their car was stalling, and they frantically tried harder when they realized Gary was now after them. Before Gary could reach the car, however, it finally stopped stalling and they drove off into the distance. Gary went to follow, but realized his car was being fixed at the moment, so he took his motorized scooter instead. At first, Gary was able to keep up with them fairly easily, as it seemed the ninjas were still having car trouble. He managed to get up close to them and started grazing their car with his katana, which seemed to piss off the ninja in the passenger seat, despite the fact he wouldn't say anything. He simply leaned out the window and death stared Gary, eventually throwing shuriken at him, forcing Gary to back off. Finally, the ninjas' car trouble stopped, with one last bang and a big puff of smoke coming out of the exhaust pipe. Gary caught the full brunt of it, the smoke fogging up his helmet's visor, causing him to slow right down to a stop after veering off to the side of the road. Gary then quickly removed his helmet and cleaned it off, noticing that as he did that the ninjas were now nowhere to be seen. Eventually, after driving around the city for hours, Gary finally found the ninjas' car in front of what was a suspected ninja hideout. He left the scooter and entered the ninja hideout as quietly and warily as possible. He walked silently through the corridors of the hideout until he found a room full of ninjas worshipping the sandwich. Gary found this odd, but decided not to bother thinking about it and instead tried sneaking in to get the sandwich. Once Gary was finally within arm's reach of the sandwich behind the table it was on, his katana pushed the table upwards, eventually knocking it over and exposing himself. Shocked and horrified that it had been discovered, Gary froze in place for several seconds, as did the ninjas. There was total silence until the ninjas all suddenly ran towards Gary, who took out his katana and one of his knives. Disposing several of the ninjas fairly quickly. Gary even broke a rolling pin he didn't realize he had until now over one of the ninjas' heads, with the action stopping for a second, only for Gary to kill another ninja to get the action going again. Eventually, Gary, now bruised and bleeding, had whittled the ninjas down to the two that had broken into his house. They fought tremendously and were immensely hard to kill. Gary caught a break, however, when one of the ninjas went to stab him, with Gary ducking at the right time and causing the ninja to stab the other ninja. Both ninjas were shocked and saddened by this, but Gary didn't waste much time in cutting the head off the ninja who had tried to stab him. Somehow, the now decapitated ninja's body reacted by violently jerking forward, pushing the blade further into the only remaining ninja, who died shortly thereafter. Gary surveyed the deceased ninjas one last time before grabbing the sandwich. Before he could leave, however, he started to hear footsteps coming from somewhere else in the building. It turned out that there was one more ninja remaining, the head ninja. The head ninja entered the room and looked around. Instead of being pissed off, the head ninja just seemed to be disappointed, giving a heavy sigh and shaking his head before directing his attention at Gary. Not wasting any more time, the head ninja quickly drew his twin wakizashi and ran straight for Gary. Gary had to think quickly. He had already used up most of his strength killing the other ninjas, so he'd need to kill the head ninja as quickly as possible. Before he could properly formulate a plan, the head ninja was right in front of him, slashing away with his wakizashi, forcing Gary backwards to avoid the attacks. Gary was kept on the defensive for several minutes, only managing a few times to push the head ninja back before ultimately being backed into a corner, dropping to the floor. Out of desperation, and having dropped his katana, Gary felt around for something to use. Luckily, one of the knives he'd brought was close by. He quickly grabbed it and, with one quick slash, cut the head ninja's left hand, forcing the head ninja to drop both of his wakizashi due to the pain. Gary quickly took advantage of the situation and caught the head ninja with a well-placed uppercut to the jaw as he stood back up. Gary then followed that up with a kick to the chest, causing the head ninja to stumble back further and end up with his back against the opposing wall. Before the head ninja could recover, Gary threw both of the head ninjas' wakizashi at him, but partially pinning him to the wall. With every ounce of strength he had left, Gary picked up his katana and ran at the head ninja, jumping at the last second and driving his katana right through the head ninja's heart, killing him almost instantly. Because of how he'd landed when he jumped, and also due to the height he managed to get, Gary had also driven both of the wakizashi's blades right into the head ninja's shoulders with his feet. Completely exhausted, Gary collapsed to the floor, with his weight managing to free the katana from the corpse of the head ninja. After resting for a while, Gary recovered enough strength to move and stood up. He grabbed the katana, the knives, and the sandwich before finally leaving the ninja hideout and heading home. Back at his house, Keith was already there and waiting for him, glad to see his partner was okay as he'd been gone for so long. He'd been justifiably worried, considering the broken glass sliding door and the blood on the floor in the kitchen. Exhausted from the experience, Gary collapsed into the nearest chair, with Keith panicking once he properly noticed the state Gary was in. Gary remembered the sandwich and handed it to Keith. Keith seemed a bit surprised by this, but not as much as he was seeing Gary all beaten up. "What's with the sandwich?" Keith asked. Keith then remembered something. "Also, why is our sliding door broken? And why is there blood on the floor? And why the hell are you so beaten up?" he added. Gary laughed, coughing a bit due to his injuries before answering. "It's a long story, Keith." And that's it.
Nice.
I guess to clarify for people who haven't read the original version, the bits that I stretched out were the head ninja fight was never there. He just sort of killed those last two and then left.
Yeah, I'm kind of glad that you added that, because, like, one thing that I was thinking when you were reading the story was just kind of how shittily ninjas get represented. You know, like, think about how many average Joes with your, oh, I have a katana, can just mow down, like, hundreds of ninjas, no problem. If I was that head ninja, I'd be fucking disappointed as well. It's like, you fuckers trained for this for years.
So yeah, it was the head ninja fight and the basically the entire paragraph of the sort of bit of a chase scene when they actually get the car going, that wasn't there either. It's just that they'd been able to get away in time before he got on his scooter and was on his way. So it just sort of goes straight from he took his motorized scooter to eventually after driving around for hours. um, so yeah, like I actually kind of prefer this version, I must say, because I wrote this an original version like let's see. I linked the original one on the Facebook group, so I'll just be able to go to that really quick and check. Um, let's see. I wrote it in 2011.
Yeah, kind of funny how
So,
4 years and a
October.
second look
Yeah.
at things can kind of change it around a little bit. But yeah, I gotta say, just with the reverse order that you, oh geez, where the fuck did Tom go? There we go.
Whoops.
Not sure what happened there.
I accidentally closed the tab. I was closing the DeviantArt one and accidentally didn't scroll too far, or didn't scroll far enough. Of accidentally closing this one. That's
Okay.
happened to me before.
I just thought you didn't like me anymore.
um,
Trying to give him some
yeah, like,
creative criticism, and it's like, fucking gone. But yeah,
um,
the thing that, I don't know. I guess from you reading them in the opposite order, and this is gonna sound fucking stupid, but whatever. Um, the whole time I was waiting for the shotgun. So
I
if
think,
you do
yeah.
another Keith and Gary epic whatever for another 2 pages, you gotta up the game. Maybe throw like a flamethrower in.
Well, yeah, I guess in a way it never occurred to me, but I probably could have done something like I figured I'd do for a writing project that I've kind of been working on, where the three different ideas I've got for this sort of trilogy is the first one's kind of inspired by like the martial arts revenge stuff, and the second one's inspired by 80s action and the 80s action movies, and then the last one's like a sort of I guess it's more of like a crime thriller or something like that, or at least inspired in that vein. So at so in a way, I'm surprised. I've mainly just kept this one to martial arts revenge stuff, which is basically what this was. Is Gary's Epic Sandwich Adventure was something I came up with out of nowhere. Even in the artist comments or whatever on DeviantArt, I just sort of said I just came up with this and went, "Hey, I've got to write this out." So I wrote that in like one sitting. Um, which is probably why I prefer this one, because I actually put some thought into it. And there's some wording that I changed and all this. I've kind of figured that I'd keep it at like just three, but if I did do more, then yeah, I probably would do them like specifically for this instead of just for fun. Oh, I mean, it'd still be for fun, but
Well, yeah, I mean,
like
like I
serving the
was saying
purpose.
before, I think it was last month, that you'd written a story that I had said kind of fit into the same universe. So, I mean,
Yeah.
like you could still continue it on like that, just, these guys' adventure or something going on in this
Mm,
side of the city
right.
or whatever, like it's when you find like your writing style, it's kind of good to kind of keep with that and then just keep
Yeah.
trying different things and go, does this work? Does this work? So,
Mm.
alrighty. Well, we're going quick today. 50% done already. All right. So, uh, like I was saying at the start of the show, this month has been a lot like last month. So, once again, I don't have a choose your own adventure story. Sorry, Tom.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, the funny thing is in this case, it also makes sense because I'd be the only one making the decision anyway.
Yeah, but when you're reading a book, you're the only one making the decision.
Well, yeah, I thought of that too, but in a way, it's kind of more fun to put it to like an actual vote.
So hopefully next month we'll get a couple more people on. If you're interested in being on the show, let me know. Write a comment, send me a message, join the Facebook group. There's tons of ways to get a hold of me if you're interested in writing and reading a funny story. So with that out of the way, let's get to mine. There are few people who truly realize the impact of their actions. The smallest decision can bring about the largest of consequences, and only those with a sound mind, a genuine heart, and reliable support stands a chance at altering the course of destiny once the pieces are in place. Commander Buzzsaw and the crew of Deep Space 69 have none of these qualities. The result of the leprechaun removal laser started a chain reaction of events which ultimately became known as the Prank War, the most brutal conflict in both the history and the future of the universe. Yeah, it was fucking crazy. Like, 6 different species of aliens tried to intervene and stop the conflict. They're all dead now, and didn't even get any sort of description whatsoever, and never will, so don't even ask. Part of the problem were the agreed upon terms of war, which stated that anything at all is legal as long as it's declared a prank. Imagine napalm coming down from space, done up like skywriting to say, "Gotcha," as it fell. Or, like someone dressed up like Santa during Spacemas, throwing explosive presents down to the populace from his rocket-powered, laser-firing, guitar-soloing sleigh. The prank war went on for decades, until an ultimatum was eventually issued and agreed upon. Representatives from Futureton, Explosionville, and Deep Space 69 agreed to meet in the town of WrestleVania, where every night is an awesome night to have a curse. When the sun goes down, everyone sheds their mild-mannered daytime personas, gets super buff, and turns into professional wrestlers. Yeah, I know. I want to live there too. When you walk down the street or through the park late at night, it's not uncommon to hear the sounds of promos being cut, much like the sound of birds singing during the day. As a matter of fact, I think I hear one currently in progress. Alright, so here's the part where I do a fucking awful imitation. No respect! No honor! There's no honor among thieves in the first place. He put hard times on the American droid, Dirty Robot, and his family. You don't know what hard times are, Daddy. Hard times are when the robot factory workers in Explosionville are out of work, can't pay for their internet connections. Hard times are when you fight in Futureton sex death tournaments for 30 years. For 30 years! They give you watch, which doesn't make sense when you're a robot and have a built-in clock. And they kick you in the butt and say, "Hey, a computer took your place, Daddy." Which also doesn't make sense as the robots are basically autonomous computers. Now that's hard times. That's hard times. So yeah, that's basically what you hear all night, every night, if you go to WrestleVania. I'd fucking go. So, back to the story. All the way to the WrestleMania arena, you could hear people yelling about rising to the top like the cream of the crop or loading the spaceship with the rocket fuel. The WrestleMania arena was packed. The audience was going fucking crazy. Some people could be seen wearing Android 316 and Goldborg t-shirts, and several could be seen waving holo signs, which are basically just hologram projections of handmade posters and signs. Even though they have the technology to make them really nice looking, they decided to keep the old school look for whatever reason. Hey, don't judge. You probably do nonsensical things due to tradition as well. Hey, Tom, did Jesus leave you lots of chocolate eggs this Easter?
Nope.
Each team had selected a group of 4 members to represent their stake in the fate of the universe, as this was a team elimination tournament. The first bout was between the crew of Deep Space 69 and the residents of Explosionville. Unfortunately, the Explosionvillians were not a city filled with warriors, and the only person who signed up for the tournament was Hacksaw, who wanted to exact revenge on his grandfather for that hologram murder thing. Double unfortunately, he was still just a kid and got the shit beat out of him in record time. Like, it was fucking brutal. It was because of this incident that the phrase, like taking candy from a baby, was dropped, and people started saying, it's like sending a highly trained team of military personnel against a 10-year-old. Representing Futureton in the next match was, of course, Shock Masterson. However, in a stunning display of cowardice and the urge to be written into future stories, he did not compete and was only there as a manager. In his place were 4 antiques from the Scrapyard of Fame: Rowdy Robot Piper, the Macho Machine, Ricky Steamboat, and of course, RoboCop, who had been inducted for that one time he rescued Sting from a cage by ripping the door off. Almost none of WrestleMania's superstars wanted to face this legendary group, so their team was comprised of 3 jobbers and Hulk Hogan. Yeah, hundreds of years in the future and he still won't get out of the fucking spotlight. RoboCop was tired of Hogan's shit and punched him straight through the chest. The jobbers started screaming and ran away, hopefully ensuring their careers for years to come. The main event was on. The crew of Deep Space 69 and the Futureton Antiques had a long stare down, and eventually RoboCop got in the ring with Lieutenant Spider-Man. It looked as though RoboCop was winding up for another heart punch. However, he hit Spider-Man with a finger poke that dropped him like a ton of bricks. After scoring the pinfall, the rest of each team came into the ring to celebrate like this was one big April Fool's joke or something. But it was no joke. A new world order had formed, as the floating city of Futureton had formed a coalition with the Earth's protectorate, Deep Space 69. Their first order of business is to make me write another choose-your-own-adventure story next month, so you can look forward to that because I don't want RoboCop to punch me through the chest. The end.
Oh, God.
Yeah, as soon as I thought of WrestleMania, I was just like, fuck, I have to use this.
Yeah.
So it kind of ties in with the next podcast as well. But yeah, I've just because I haven't had time to do things, so I've just been watching a lot of WWE Network. So it kind of showed up a lot in the story. I mean, I've seen that fucking Hard Times promo like 1 billion times in the past couple weeks.
uh, If anything, I was almost surprised that you didn't have Shock Masterson do the Shock Master bit where he falls through falls through the wall.
It
Like I
could
guess
still happen. You never know.
mm.
Oh, now I feel bad. We have a viewer and the stories are all done. Well, with that, I guess I'll just say, we're gonna end things now and head on over to Tom's channel. So, go to youtube.com/Aussie Imitator, and, you can hear us talk about wrestling that's not a weird fucking robot story. So, for, the limited crew here at the Two Pages podcast this month. I'm your host, Skeletroid Blockbuster, and join us over on Tom's channel. See ya!